four-wheel drive vehicles dominating the top of the SRC, classes 10 to 13 are normally represented by the top crews. In this video we'll look at the crews in these cars who haven't featured in the top of the standings so far this season. Kicking off with the Snowmen. On their first SRC event in a four-wheel drive car, Alistair Graham and Laura Stewart took 4th in Class 10 and 26th overall. Not the ideal conditions to be learning four-wheel drive. Finishing in the top 10 of last year's SRC points, Fraser Wilson and Craig Wallace had a very average day at the office in the Snowmen. Wrong tyre choices all day plus a couple of spins left them 3rd in the class and 25th overall. Just 8 seconds ahead at the finish, it was a similar story for John Morrison and Peter Carstairs. 2nd in the class and 23rd in John's local event wasn't the start to the year they were after. After a disastrous day in his local event, Alistair Anderson rounded out both the Class 11 and overall finishers in 93rd place. 35 places up the overall rankings, Stephen Fraser and Rory Campbell grabbed 58th overall, despite 2 minutes of road penalties. 10 places up the rankings, Matthew Thompson took 48th overall and 3rd in the Subaru Cup. 3 seconds ahead, Lindsay Henderson and Paul Cummins took 47th overall at the finish, Lindsay continuing to learn the four-wheel drive game. Holding back the hordes of Subarus, David McLean and Charles McKenzie bucked the trend in their Evo 5, taking a solid 38th overall. 35th overall and 2nd in the Subaru Cup went to Drew McDonald and Susan Shanks. Elia Gold and Jean Hay had an adventurous day. After removing both front indicators on Bales in SS1, they were then delayed in 2, stopping to help another crew whose car was on fire. Despite all this, they grabbed 33rd overall in the Evo 6. Returning to rallying for the first time since the days of no route notes and two-wheel drive cars, Keith Morris had Martin Forrest alongside to guide him. 30th overall and 9th in class was a good result. After years of Civic motoring, Duncan Campbell and Gavin Chisholm had upgraded to an Impreza, 28th overall, and 8th in class was a good Snowman outing for the DC7 crew. Another crew moving to four-wheel drive, Simon Hay and Callan Jaffrey impressed a lot of people with their pace, grabbing 22nd overall at the finish. Just 4 seconds ahead at the finish, Scott Macbeth was another recent four-wheel drive convert, having only driven the Evo and Tarmac before the Snowman. It was another learning day, although 21st overall was a great result. Only 7 seconds ahead of the Blue Evo, Scott Much and Greg McDonald had a good run, dominating the inaugural Subaru Cup. And 4th in the class at the finish, Ian Wilson and Keith Riddick spent the second half of the day in rear-wheel drive after the front diff failed, salvaging 19th overall. "11th in the class and 42nd overall wasn't quite as good as a result as hoped for Brian Watson and Caroline Well in the Lancer WRC replica. 15 seconds up the road in the ex-Gallagher Fiesta, it was a steady run for James Gibb and Ian Robson. 24th overall and 9th in the class was a good day out for David Ross and Kyle McIntosh in the crowd-pleasing DAM. Third in the class at the finish, it was a strong start to the day for John Rintoul and Ross Hind before some final loop problems left them to struggle home in 36th overall. Moving to the border counties in the second round of the season, it was another average day for Wilson and Wallace. Always a slow starter, Fraser was just getting into his stride when a double puncture finally ruined the day. 42nd overall and 4th in class was another disappointing result. After an electrical fault cost them 6 minutes in SS1, John Morrison and Peter Carstairs had their day ruined from the start. 41st overall and 3rd in class was all they could manage after a hard day. Much happier, to the tune of 4 minutes quicker at the end of the day, it was an encouraging result for Craig Rutherford and Chris Hamill, flying the flag for Subaru in Class 10. 2nd in class was a great result after retiring at the Snowman. Rounding off the class finishers after a 10-minute off in the final stage, it was another day of learning four-wheel drive for Simon Hay and Callum Jaffrey. Struggling with fuel problems, Jan Budge and Chris Pattison stuttered to 54th overall in their Impreza. 13th in class and 51st overall, Jeff Gowdy and Murray Strachan were bedding themselves into a new car. The car was so new it didn't even have anti-lag installed in time for the event. Lindsay Henderson had Tom Hind alongside this time out, 40th overall, and 3 minutes up on Gowdy was a solid run. Over a minute ahead, and 32nd overall, Matthew Thompson and Ian Graham took top Subaru Cup honours. Despite still claiming to be confused by route notes and four-wheel drive, Keith Morris grabbed 20th overall in the Evo, showing he could really surprise people once he gets into the swing of modern rallying. "19 seconds in front, Ian Baumgart and Mike Dixon were happy to finish an event after two gearbox failures in a row on the Snowman and the Malcolm Wilson rally. Only 3 seconds up at the finish, Ian Wilson and Keith Reddick survived the late puncture to take 18th overall. Returning to the SRC after a few years away, Stephen Lockhart guided his Evo to 17th overall, 20 seconds clear of the Wilson Impreza. And on his second SRC event in the Evo, Scott Macbeth had a solid run to 15th overall, despite losing 40 seconds with a front left puncture. Rounding off the class finishers on only his third gravel rally, Barry Rennick was happy just to finish in the Proton. "6 minutes ahead, James Gibb took 11th in the class, although he felt he needs some testing time in the Fiesta. "28th overall was a better result than the Snowman for Brian Watson, although he did manage to do this in front of our camera. On his first SRC event of the year, Sean Will struggled with early turbo problems, but managed 9th in class at the finish. And 14th overall at the finish was another solid result for Ross McDonald and Matthew Johnson, despite a misheard note in the last stage resulting in a lucky escape from a waiting ditch.